The billionaire CEO pulled his baseball cap low and stepped into his own store. Nobody recognized Liam Stone, not the cashiers, not the security guard, not even the manager who was supposed to be running this place. He'd come here undercover for a reason, but nothing could have prepared him for what he heard next. Desperate sobbing echoing from the employee restroom. Through the crack under the door, a silver name badge lay abandoned on wet tile. Eleanor Vance, custodial staff. The crying inside wasn't just sadness. Before we continue, tell us where in the world you are watching from. Drop it in the comments below, and if you enjoy this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful content like this. It was the sound of someone whose world was falling apart. Liam's blood ran cold. 3 months ago, the corporation had received glowing reports about this location. Perfect employee satisfaction scores, 0 complaints. But the woman crying behind that door told a different story entirely. As he stood frozen in a harsh fluorescent light, one terrifying question burned through his mind. If this was happening in his own company, under his own nose, what else had he missed? The truth he was about to uncover would be worse than anything he'd imagined, and it would force him to question everything he thought he knew about leadership, loyalty, and the real cost of looking the other way. What started as a routine visit was about to become the most important 48 hours of his career. Stay with me, because what happens next will change how you see workplace leadership forever. Liam knocked gently on the restroom door. "Excuse me, are you okay there?" The sobbing stopped abruptly. He heard shuffling, then the sound of someone trying to compose themselves. I'm fine. Just give me a minute." But her voice betrayed everything. This wasn't fine. This was a woman on the edge. When Eleanor Vance finally emerged, Liam saw a petite African-American woman in her early 40s. Her custodial uniform wrinkled and her eyes red from crying. She quickly bent to retrieve her name badge, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grasp it. "I'm sorry," she whispered, not making eye contact. "I shouldn't be. I need to get back to work." Liam studied her more closely. Eleanor's hands were cracked and raw from harsh cleaning chemicals. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, the kind that come from working multiple jobs and getting too little sleep. But it was something else that caught his attention. The way she flinched when footsteps approached from the main floor. "You don't look fine," Liam said softly. "I'm Dave, by the way. Just started here today." Eleanor glanced up, seeming to assess whether this stranger could be trusted. After a moment, her shoulders sagged with exhaustion. "It's just, everything's falling apart," she admitted. "My daughter Clara needs surgery. Her heart condition is getting worse, and I can't afford—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this." "How long have you worked here?" Liam asked. 3 years. Never missed a day. Never been late. But lately—" She gestured helplessly toward a bulletin board covered in work schedules. Liam followed her gaze and felt his stomach drop. The schedule was a mess of crossed-out shifts, reduced hours, and handwritten changes. Eleanor's name appeared sporadically, sometimes 20 hours one week, 35 the next, then dropped back to 15. No consistency, no way to budget or plan. "They keep cutting my hours," Eleanor explained, her voice barely audible. "Mr. Higgins says it's corporate policy, but I don't understand. The store is always busy. We're always understaffed." Liam's jaw clenched. He knew the corporate policy on scheduling, and this wasn't it. Full-time employees were guaranteed consistent hours. What he was seeing looked like deliberate manipulation. And when I asked about the health insurance that was supposed to kick in after 90 days, Eleanor's voice cracked. He said I wasn't eligible because my hours were too irregular. The pieces were starting to form a picture that made Liam's blood boil, but he forced himself to stay calm, to keep playing his role. "That doesn't sound right," he said carefully. Eleanor looked around nervously, then leaned closer. "There are others, too. Ben in electronics, Jessica in cosmetics. We're all having the same problems. But Mr. Higgins says, if we don't like it, plenty of people would be happy to take our jobs." A chill ran down Liam's spine. Mark Higgins. He remembered the name from the management roster. Regional manager. Good performance reviews. No red flags in his file. At least none that had made it to corporate. "Listen, Dave," Eleanor continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I need this job. My daughter, she's only 8, and without the surgery..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Liam watched as she pinned her name badge back onto her uniform with trembling fingers. That small silver rectangle represented everything to her. Her daughter's medical care, their rent, their survival, and someone was using that desperation against her. "I should go," Eleanor said, glancing toward the main floor. "My shift ends at 11 o'clock, but I'm supposed to come back at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning for inventory. Mr. Higgins scheduled me for a double shift, but somehow the system only shows 8 hours of pay." As she walked away, Liam noticed her slight limp, probably from standing on concrete floors for years without proper support. The company handbook clearly stated that employees were entitled to anti-fatigue mats and ergonomic support, another policy that apparently wasn't being followed. Liam stood alone in the hallway, staring at that chaotic schedule board. Each crossed-out shift represented a family struggling to make ends meet. Each arbitrary hour cut meant someone choosing between groceries and gas money. He'd built Stone Enterprises on the principle that good companies take care of their people. But somewhere in the gap between boardroom policies and floor-level reality, that principle was being systematically destroyed. The question was, how deep did this go? And who else was suffering while he sat in his ivory tower, oblivious to their pain? Liam didn't have to wait long to see the system in action. The next morning, he watched from the break room as Eleanor clocked in for her 6 a.m. shift. She moved carefully, favoring her left leg, but her face was determined. Whatever struggles she faced at home, she was here, ready to work. At 6:47 a.m., Mark Higgins emerged from his office. Mark was exactly what Liam had expected. Mid-30s, overly gelled hair, and the kind of swagger that came from having just enough power to abuse it. He wore his manager badge like a weapon, and his eyes immediately found Eleanor mopping near the electronics section. "Vance?" Mark's voice cut across the store like a whip crack. Eleanor's shoulders tensed, but she continued working. "Vance, I'm talking to you." She finally looked up, her face carefully neutral. "Yes, Mr. Higgins. This floor is still dirty. What exactly have you been doing for the past hour?" Liam watched Eleanor's jaw tighten. The floor was spotless. He could see his reflection in the tiles, but she simply nodded. "I'll go over it again." "You better. And next time, maybe try actually working instead of feeling sorry for yourself. Mark's voice dripped with contempt. Speaking of which, I need to see you in my office now. Liam felt his hands clench into fists. He forced himself to stay seated, to keep observing. If he intervened now, he'd blow his cover before understanding the full scope of the problem. In Mark's office, Eleanor stood while Mark remained seated, a deliberate power play that made Liam's skin crawl. Through the glass partition, he could see Eleanor's posture grow smaller with each word Mark spoke. Ben Carter, the electronics clerk Eleanor had mentioned, slipped into the break room and sat down heavily beside Liam. Poor Eleanor, Ben muttered, shaking his head. Third time this week she's been called in there. What's he saying to her? Liam asked. Ben glanced around nervously. Same thing he says to all of us, that we're lucky to have jobs, that people like us. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. That we should be grateful for whatever hours we get. People like us, you know, single mothers, people who can't afford to quit. Ben's voice was bitter. Mark knows exactly who he can push around. Through the glass, Liam watched Mark lean back in his chair, his body language radiating casual cruelty. Eleanor stood rigid, her hands clasped behind her back like a soldier enduring inspection. Then Mark did something that made Liam's vision go red. He pulled out Eleanor's timesheet and began making changes with a red pen right in front of her. Liam couldn't hear the words, but he could see Eleanor's face crumple as Mark slashed through her recorded hours. He's cutting her time again, Ben whispered, probably claiming she took unauthorized breaks or something. Last week, he docked Jessica 3 hours for excessive bathroom usage. She's pregnant. Liam reached for his phone, his fingers finding the voice recorder app. Whatever was happening in that office, he needed evidence. Through the thin walls, Mark's voice carried clearly. Told you before, Vance. If you can't handle the workload without getting emotional, maybe this isn't the right job for you. There are plenty of people who'd be grateful for your position. Please, Mr. Higgins. Eleanor's voice was barely audible. I just need consistent hours, my daughter. Your personal problems aren't my concern. What concerns me is that you've been talking to other employees about scheduling. That sounds like troublemaking to me. Liam's thumb hit record. I wasn't making trouble. I was just what? Trying to organize some kind of complaint? Because that would be very unfortunate for your employment status here. The threat was crystal clear. Eleanor fell silent. Now, I'm cutting you back to 12 hours next week. Maybe that'll help you focus on work instead of stirring up drama. And Vance, if I hear you've been talking to anyone else about scheduling or policies, we'll need to discuss whether you're a good fit for this company at all. Liam watched Eleanor nod silently, her dignity stripped away piece by piece. When she finally emerged from the office, her face was pale but composed. She walked past the break room without looking in, her head held high despite everything. But Liam had seen enough. The phone in his pocket contained Mark's own words, a smoking gun that revealed the systematic abuse of power happening under Stone Enterprises' name. As Mark returned to his office, whistling casually like he hadn't just destroyed someone's week, Liam felt something crystallize inside him. This wasn't just about Eleanor anymore. This was about every vulnerable employee who'd been ground down by petty tyrants like Mark Higgins. The time for observation was over. Now it was time to see just how deep this corruption went. Liam left the store that evening with his mind racing. He drove his rental car, a modest sedan, nothing that would draw attention, back to the budget hotel where he'd been staying under his fake identity. In room 237, surrounded by corporate reports and employee files, he began planning his next move. The recording on his phone played back Mark's threats. Each word was like a nail in the man's professional coffin. But Liam knew this was just the tip of the iceberg. If Mark felt comfortable enough to openly threaten employees, what was he doing when he thought nobody was watching? Liam pulled up the store's employment records on his laptop. What he found made his stomach turn. Over the past 8 months, the store had seen a 60% turnover rate among hourly employees. The official reason listed for most departures was voluntary resignation. But Liam could read between the lines. People didn't voluntarily leave jobs in an economy like this. They were driven out. He cross-referenced the departure dates with Mark's performance reviews. Ironically, Mark's numbers looked stellar. Labor costs down 23%, efficiency ratings up, 0 formal complaints filed with HR. On paper, Mark Higgins was a model manager. But Liam was beginning to understand how Mark had gamed the system. Keep employees desperate and scared, prevent them from working enough hours to qualify for benefits, and make sure anyone who might complain simply disappeared from the roster. It was elegant in its cruelty. Liam opened a new browser window and began crafting his deeper cover story. Dave Miller, laid-off construction worker, desperate for any job, no family to worry about, just grateful for the opportunity. The kind of employee Mark would see as perfectly exploitable. He practiced the persona in the mirror, adjusting his posture, his speech patterns, even his walk. Liam had grown up in neighborhoods like this before his business took off. He knew how to blend in. The key was remembering rather than acting. The next morning, Liam returned to the store in his worn jeans and second-hand work boots. He approached Mark's office with the perfect mixture of desperation and eagerness. "Excuse me, Mr. Higgins. I heard you might have some openings. I'm willing to work any shift, any hours you need." Mark looked up from his computer, his eyes immediately assessing this new potential victim. Liam could practically see the calculations running through the man's head. Another desperate worker to manipulate. Experience? Construction mostly, but that dried up. I need steady work. I'm not picky about the job. Cleaning, stocking, whatever. You got references? Liam handed over a carefully crafted resume complete with fake references he'd arranged through contacts. "These guys will vouch for me. I show up. I work hard. I don't cause problems." Mark's smile was predatory. "I like that attitude. Tell you what, Dave, I can start you in custodial. Night shift, $12 an hour. You'll be working with Eleanor, but don't let her fill your head with complaints. She's got a tendency toward drama." The casual cruelty in Mark's voice made Liam want to reach across the desk, but he forced himself to nod eagerly. "That sounds perfect, sir. When do I start?" "Tonight, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And Dave," Mark leaned forward, "I reward loyalty and hard work. Employees who understand how things work here do well. Employees who cause trouble don't." Liam nodded like he understood perfectly, and he did, just not in the way Mark intended. That evening, Liam changed into his work clothes in the store bathroom, transforming himself completely into Dave Miller. He pinned his temporary name tag to his shirt, the plastic rectangle feeling foreign after years of expensive suits and boardroom meetings. When Eleanor arrived for the night shift, she looked surprised to see him. "You came back," she said quietly. "Told you I needed the job," Liam replied. "Guess we're working together." Eleanor studied his face, perhaps sensing something different about this new employee, but unable to place what it was. "Stick close to me tonight," she said finally. "I'll show you the ropes. And Dave, everything I told you yesterday about being careful around Mr. Higgins, double that for the night shift. That's when he does his worst work." As the store lights dimmed and the last customers filtered out, Liam felt the weight of what he was about to discover. Somewhere in the next 8 hours, he would learn the full extent of Mark Higgins's operation. He was no longer just observing the problem. He was about to live it. The store transformed after closing time. What had seemed like a normal retail environment during the day revealed its true nature in the fluorescent lit shadows of the night shift. Liam followed Eleanor through her routine, learning the intricate choreography of overnight custodial work. But within the first hour, he began noticing things that made his blood pressure rise. "Eleanor, why are you cleaning the employee break room with the same supplies you use for the bathrooms?" he asked, watching her rinse a mop in a bucket that reeked of industrial disinfectant. She glanced around nervously before answering. "Mr. Higgins cut the cleaning supply budget. Says we're using too much." She held up a nearly empty bottle of floor cleaner. "This has to last a whole week for the entire store." Liam knew the corporate allocation for cleaning supplies. This store should have 10 times what he was seeing. At 11:30 p.m., Mark made his first appearance. He prowled through the aisles like a predator, his footsteps echoing in the empty store. When he found Eleanor restocking the paper towels in the customer restrooms, his voice cut through the silence. "Vance, you're moving too slow. At this rate, you'll be here until morning." "I'm working as fast as I can, Mr. Higgins." "Not fast enough. I'm docking 30 minutes from your timesheet for inefficiency." Liam watched from behind a display rack as Mark pulled out his phone and made a note. 30 minutes. $6 stolen right in front of his eyes, but it got worse. At 1:15 a.m., Mark returned with a clipboard. "Vance, Miller, come here." They gathered in the main aisle as Mark consulted his notes. "Corporate's been asking questions about our labor costs. Starting next week, we're implementing some efficiency measures." He smiled like he was announcing bonuses. "Instead of 2 people on night custodial, we're going back to 1. Eleanor's face went pale. "Mr. Higgins, this is a 45,000 square foot store. One person can't." "One person can and will. Eleanor, since you've been here longer, you keep the position, but you'll need to handle the full workload in the same time frame." Liam did the math in his head. What they were doing tonight with 2 people was already pushing the limits of human endurance. Asking one person to do it all was physically impossible. "If you can't handle it," Mark continued, "I can always find someone who can." After Mark left, Eleanor slumped against the checkout counter. "I can't do this whole store alone," she whispered. "But if I complain, you'll lose the job entirely," Liam finished. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "My daughter's surgery is scheduled for next month. I need this insurance." That's when Liam noticed something that made his investigative instincts flare. Mark had left his office door slightly open, and through the gap, Liam could see him at his computer typing rapidly. "Eleanor, can you handle the East Wing by yourself for a few minutes? I want to check something." She looked confused, but nodded. "Be careful, Dave. If he catches you snooping." Liam moved silently toward the office. Through the crack in the door, he could see Mark's computer screen clearly. What he saw made his hands shake with rage. Mark was logged into the employee scheduling system, systematically reducing hours for multiple employees. But he wasn't just cutting time. He was redistributing those hours to a phantom employee named M. Higgins, Jr. Mark was stealing hours from his workers and assigning them to a fake account, probably his own son, or a way to pad his own overtime. Every hour he stole from Eleanor, from Ben, from Jessica, was going directly into his pocket. Liam pulled out his phone and began recording through the door crack. The evidence was right there on the screen. Systematic wage theft happening in real time. But then he saw something even worse. Mark opened another program, the Health Insurance Enrollment System. He pulled up Eleanor's file and changed her employment status from full-time eligible to part-time temporary, despite her working full-time hours for 3 years. With a few keystrokes, Mark had just denied Eleanor the health coverage her daughter needed for surgery. Liam felt a rage so pure it took all his self-control not to burst through that door. But he forced himself to keep recording, to document every click, every theft, every casual destruction of a family's future. At 3 a.m., Mark emerged from his office looking satisfied. "Miller, I need you to move all the pallets from the back room to the sales floor by yourself." Liam looked at the mountain of boxes, easily a 4-person job. "All of them? Problem with that? Because I can call someone who won't give me attitude." "No problem," Liam said through gritted teeth. As he began the back-breaking work, moving hundreds of pounds of merchandise alone, Liam understood something crucial. This wasn't just about money for Mark. It was about power, the joy of watching people struggle, of holding their lives in his hands and squeezing just to see them suffer. By 4 a.m., Liam's back was screaming and his hands were raw. But he gathered enough evidence to destroy Mark Higgins' career 10 times over. Wage theft, benefit fraud, unsafe working conditions, workplace harassment. It was a masterclass in how to abuse every labor law on the books. But as dawn approached and he watched Eleanor limp through her final tasks, barely able to stand after 10 hours of brutal work, Liam realized something that changed everything. This wasn't just about Mark Higgins anymore. This was about a system that allowed predators like Mark to thrive, while good people like Eleanor suffered in silence. And that system started at the top, with him. Tomorrow, it will all come to an end. But first, he needed one more piece of evidence. The smoking gun that would make his case unshakable. Liam's opportunity came at 5:30 a.m. Just as the night shift was winding down, Mark had disappeared into his office for what he called his end-of-shift paperwork, leaving Liam and Eleanor to finish the final cleaning tasks. But Liam had noticed a pattern over the past few hours. Every 30 minutes, Mark's office phone would ring with the same distinctive ringtone. 2 short bursts followed by a longer one. Each time, Mark would answer in hushed tones, speaking for exactly 3 to 4 minutes before hanging up. As Eleanor gathered the cleaning supplies, Liam made his decision. "I'm going to empty the trash in the office area," he told her. Eleanor looked concerned. "Mr. Higgins doesn't like anyone near his office when he's doing paperwork." "I'll be quick." Liam grabbed a trash bin and pushed his cart toward the administrative area. The office hallway was dimly lit with Mark's office at the far end. Through the frosted glass, he could see Mark's silhouette hunched over his desk. Then the phone rang. 2 short bursts, 1 long. Liam positioned himself near the supply closet adjacent to Mark's office, close enough to hear but hidden from view. He pulled out his phone and started recording. "Higgins here," Mark answered, his voice low but audible through the thin walls. "Yeah, I got your numbers for this week. Vance is down to 12 hours. Carter's at 15, the pregnant one, Jessica. I'm putting her on inventory duty. That'll make her quit within a month." Liam's blood ran cold. Mark was reporting to someone about his systematic harassment of employees. No complaints filed. They're too scared to go to work. I've made sure of that." Mark chuckled. "The beauty is that corporations see our labor costs dropping and think I'm some kind of efficiency genius." The voice on the other end was muffled, but Liam could make out a question about documentation. "Of course I'm covering my tracks. I've got fake performance reviews for all of them. Attitude problems, reliability issues. You know the drill. If anyone ever asks, I've got a paper trail showing they deserve what they got." Liam heard papers rustling as Mark pulled out files. "Here's the beautiful part. I'm billing all their cut hours to my nephew's employee ID. Kid's making $800 a week, and he's never set foot in the store. Corporate pays the wages to an account I control, and I just pocket the difference." The conversation continued for another minute, with Mark detailing how he'd been running this scheme across multiple stores, not just this one. Every word was being captured on Liam's phone. A complete confession to federal wage theft, conspiracy, and fraud. But then Mark said something that made Liam's hands tremble with rage. "The Vance woman is the perfect target. Single mothers need insurance, don't speak up. I could cut her to 0 hours and she'd still show up begging for work. Her kid needs some kind of heart surgery, so she'll take whatever abuse I dish out." The casual cruelty in Mark's voice, the way he spoke about Eleanor's desperation as a tool for his entertainment, pushed Liam past his breaking point. "Yeah, I know the type," Mark continued. "These people are grateful for scraps. They think they're lucky to have any job at all. Makes them really easy to control." Liam heard Mark's chair creak as he leaned back. "Don't worry about exposure." Who's going to believe them? A bunch of immigrants and high school dropouts against a regional manager with stellar performance reviews. Corporate would laugh them out of the building. The call ended with Mark scheduling another check-in for the following week. As Liam heard the phone click into its cradle, he realized he'd just recorded a complete confession, not just to the crimes Mark was committing, but to his entire philosophy of exploitation. Liam quickly backed away from the office, his heart pounding. He had everything he needed: the recorded calls, the computer screen footage of Mark manipulating timesheets, photographic evidence of unsafe working conditions, and now this. Mark's own words proving premeditated systematic abuse of vulnerable employees. As he rejoined Eleanor for the final cleaning tasks, Liam noticed she was moving even more slowly than usual. Her face was pale, and she kept pressing her hand to her chest. "Eleanor, are you okay?" "Just tired," she said. But Liam could see it was more than that. The stress, the physical demands, the constant fear, it was literally killing her. "When was the last time you saw a doctor?" Eleanor laughed bitterly. "Doctors cost money. My insurance doesn't kick in until I work full-time for 90 days straight. But Mr. Higgins makes sure that never happens." Liam watched her struggle to lift a bag of trash that weighed less than 30 pounds. This woman was working herself to death for a man who saw her suffering as entertainment. At 6 a.m. sharp, Mark emerged from his office with a stack of paperwork and a satisfied smile. "Good work tonight, people. Vance, make sure you're here at 2 p.m. for inventory. Miller, I might have some more shifts for you if you keep this up." As Mark walked away, whistling tunelessly, Liam felt the weight of the evidence on his phone. Tomorrow morning, he would end Mark Higgins' reign of terror. But tonight, he had to watch Eleanor hobble to her car, knowing she'd be back in 8 hours to face it all again. The smoking gun was loaded. Now it was time to fire. Liam didn't sleep that night. He spent the early morning hours in his hotel room organizing evidence and making phone calls. By 8 a.m., he had assembled a comprehensive file of Mark Higgins' crimes, complete with recorded confessions, photographic evidence, and financial documentation. But he wasn't just preparing a case, he was preparing for war. At 1:45 p.m., Liam returned to the store as Dave Miller one last time. He found Eleanor in the break room trying to force down a peanut butter sandwich despite obvious nausea. "You sure you're okay?" he asked, genuinely concerned. "Just need to get through today," she whispered. "Clara's surgery got moved up to next week. I can't afford to miss any more hours." Liam felt his resolve crystallize. This ended today. At 2 p.m. sharp, Mark gathered the afternoon shift for mandatory inventory training. About 15 employees stood in a semicircle near customer service, including Eleanor, Ben, Jessica, who was now visibly pregnant, and several others Liam recognized as victims of Mark's systematic abuse. "All right, people, listen up," Mark announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who enjoyed wielding power over others. "Corporate's breathing down our necks about inventory accuracy, so we're implementing some new procedures." He pulled out a clipboard thick with forms. "From now on, any discrepancies come out of the responsible employee's paycheck. Lost merchandise, miscounts, damaged goods, it all gets deducted from your wages." Liam saw several employees exchange worried glances. This was illegal under federal labor law, and Mark knew it. "I know some of you might think this is unfair," Mark continued, his eyes finding Eleanor in the crowd. "But maybe if certain people paid more attention to their work instead of worrying about personal problems, we wouldn't need these measures." The direct attack on Eleanor was the final straw. Liam stepped forward from the back of the group. "Actually, Mark, I think there's something unfair here, but it's not what you think." Mark's eyes narrowed. "Miller, you got something to say?" "Yeah, I do." Liam reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "I've got quite a lot to say, actually." The first recording began to play. Mark's voice crystal clear, boasting about cutting employees' hours and pocketing the difference. The effect was electric. Every employee in a circle turned to stare at Mark, whose face had gone from smug confidence to pale shock in seconds. "What the hell is this?" Mark sputtered. "This is you last night at 5:30 a.m. explaining to your accomplice how you've been stealing wages and manipulating schedules." Liam's voice was calm, controlled, but every word hit like a hammer blow. The recording continued. "The Vance woman is the perfect target. Single mother, needs the insurance, doesn't speak up." Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. Around a circle, other employees began to murmur, anger building in their voices. "You recorded me illegally!" Mark shouted, but his bluster couldn't hide the panic in his eyes. "Actually, Michigan is a one-party consent state. Perfectly legal." Liam stepped closer to Mark and for the first time let his real authority show through. "But wage theft, benefit fraud, conspiracy to defraud, those are federal crimes." Mark's eyes darted around the circle of employees, all of whom were now looking at him with undisguised hatred. "You don't know who you're messing with, Miller. I'll have you arrested for..." For what? Exposing the truth? Liam reached into his other pocket and pulled out something that made Mark's blood drain from his face entirely. A gold badge. CEO Stone Enterprises. The silence that followed was deafening. Liam could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights, the distant sound of shopping carts, the sharp intake of breath from 15 employees who suddenly understood what they were witnessing. "My name isn't Dave Miller," Liam said, his voice carrying across the store. "I'm Liam Stone. I own this company, and you, Mark Higgins, are finished." The explosion of reactions was immediate. Gasps, whispers, a few employees stepping back in shock. But Liam kept his eyes locked on Mark, whose face had cycled through shock, fear, and was now settling into desperate anger. "You can't do this," Mark screamed. "I've got rights. I've got a contract." "You had a contract," Liam corrected, "but fraud voids all employment agreements. Security." Two Stone Enterprise security officers who had been positioned outside since 9 a.m. entered the store and approached Mark. "Mark Higgins, you're terminated, effective immediately. You're also under investigation for wage theft, benefit fraud, and conspiracy. These officers will escort you from the premises." As security moved toward Mark, he made one last desperate play. "You can't prove anything. It's their word against mine." He pointed at the employees. "Who's going to believe a bunch of..." "Careful," Liam's voice cut like ice. "I've got your own recorded confession. I've got computer logs showing every illegal transaction. I've got photographic evidence of every violation." He stepped closer to Mark, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "And I've got something else, Mark. I've got power, real power, the kind you've been pretending to have." Mark's shoulders sagged as the security officers reached him. "This isn't over," he muttered. "Yes, it is." Liam turned to address the gathered employees. "And for all of you, it's just beginning." As Mark was escorted from the store, past customers who stopped to stare, past checkout lanes he'd terrorized employees in, past the office where he'd orchestrated months of systematic abuse, Liam felt a satisfaction deeper than any business deal he'd ever closed. But the real work was just starting. The silence after Mark's departure was deafening. 15 employees stood in a circle, staring at their actual CEO, trying to process what had just happened. Liam could see confusion, relief, and weariness battling across their faces. Eleanor was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper. You're really the owner?" "I am, and I owe all of you an apology." Liam looked each employee in the eye. I built this company on the principle that we take care of our people. But I failed you. I got so focused on boardroom numbers that I lost sight of what was happening on the ground. Ben stepped forward, still clutching his inventory clipboard. So, what happens now? Are we all getting fired for talking to you? The question hit Liam like a physical blow. These people were so conditioned to fear retaliation that even their liberation looked like a threat. Nobody's getting fired. In fact, we're going to fix everything Mark broke starting right now. Liam pulled out his phone. I'm calling our head of HR. Every illegal hour cut, every stolen wage, every denied benefit. We're going to make it right. Within 20 minutes, Rachel Green, Stone Enterprises Chief Human Resources Officer, arrived with a team of 3 specialists and a stack of laptops. Liam had worked with